What do you think micronutrients' role is when it comes to brain function, emotional regulation within the scope of the people that you're working with?
I think it is of the utmost importance to make sure that we're looking at nutrition and that the patient is optimized from a nutritional standpoint, because nutrition literally is the building blocks of us. Like our DNA is made out of it, our cells, our mitochondria, our neurotransmitters, our muscles, our bones, our brains, everything is made out of food,
Mhm.
essentially. So if I feel like it's kind of like the foundation of a home, if that is not sound, there's going to be issues down the road, right? Nutrition affects the way that our cells communicate with each other. I mean, it's just so important, and it can be such low hanging fruit to address.
Yeah.
And even the most, like you said, the most like well-intentioned people, they could be doing their best to eat like a really balanced diet and focus on fruits and vegetables and whatnot. And the quality of the food is not always there.
Hello and welcome to True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada, a show where we take a deep dive into the many physiological and psychological aspects of mental health. In a world that is both beautiful and wild, this is your space for motivation, inspiration, knowledge, and real solutions. At True Hope Canada, we are dedicated to supporting brain and body wellness through non-invasive nutritional means because we believe that healing happens when we treat the whole person. To learn more, please visit truehopecanada.com. Today's guest on the show is Britt Ritchie. She's a mental health professional who works with ambitious women carrying a heavy emotional and mental load, often silently. Whether they are navigating imposter syndrome, perfectionism, or just trying to keep it all together beneath the surface, Britt helps them move beyond survival mode. Through personalized root cause focused care, she helps clients reconnect with their calm, clarity, and true sense of self. So confidence isn't just a mask, it's something they really, truly feel. In this episode, we're reimagining mental health beyond medication and diagnosis and diving into why micronutrients are vital for psychological well-being. Britt brings a fresh, compassionate perspective that blends science, nutrition, and deep emotional healing. If you're ready to explore new paradigms of mental health, you're in the right place. Don't forget to follow the show and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show. Okay, hi Britt, welcome to True Hope Cast. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you and what's going well?
I am doing great. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And everything is going well for me this beautiful spring season. The sun is shining and I'm feeling great and I'm happy to be here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, we're going to be talking about reimagining mental health beyond medication and diagnosis today. But before we jump into that topic, would you mind just explaining a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. So, you've invited me here because I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner and I have been in this industry for over 8 years. I was a medical nurse for 10 years before that. And I've worked in a variety of fields. I've worked in community mental health. I've worked in a small group practice. I've worked in a hospital setting doing consultation liaison psychiatry. I'm certified for TMS for treatment resistant depression and OCD, which is a non medication treatment called transmagnetic cranial therapy. And I was a professor at the University of Colorado here in Denver for 3 years as well.
Awesome. Quite the resume.
Yeah.
And now in regards to your work, like how have you transitioned from, all of those different settings to where you are now?
Yeah. So obviously, I've worked in a lot of different settings. I have quite a few years of experience. I've treated kind of every type of psychiatric condition, worked with every type of person. And I have found that I have kind of gotten tired of the traditional model of care and feeling kind of boxed into what I'm able to provide my patients. So I have decided to start my own practice, which is called Mind Alchemy Mental Health. And I practice integrative psychiatry, and I specialize in treating ambitious women with symptoms of depression, anxiety, ADHD, and burnout, often in the context of perfectionism and imposter syndrome, through this root cause integrative care. And it allows me the freedom to provide interventions that I wouldn't be able to provide in like a traditional model of care setting.
Interesting. I've got a couple of questions about that. Tell me about this traditional model of care that you got fed up with and why.
So typically how clinics are structured is that there are prescribers, psychiatrists, psych NPs, and therapists. And the goal is to see as many people as we can in a day because people need care, right? So we're trying to see the most people as possible. So they have us working kind of at the top of our scope of practice, which for me would be medication management because therapists can't provide that service. So that's kind of what I would do all day, every day. I would see 16, 20 patients a day, kind of just talking about medication. And I am longing to do something more than that.
Well, that's like you just basically described the conventional model of medicine, right? Like short consultations, medication management. And I just wonder, like, as a practitioner, what is it exactly you kind of got tired of? Was it that routine? Was it the fact that was kind of, you were in this kind of like reductionist model where you only really had like a very small toolbox to work from? What was it exactly that you felt like you wanted to leave and do something for yourself? Because obviously you saw parts of the practice that weren't to your liking or weren't efficient or weren't serving people. Like, how would you describe that experience?
Yeah, so I think there's multiple facets of that. One would be wanting to provide more of a holistic approach by myself, and not having the time to do that. Another would be constraints or limitations set by insurance companies as to really what would be reimbursed for. Another is kind of just straight up politics of different types of establishments that you work for. And I think that time is a big one, not having enough time to really cover everything that needs to be covered, in my opinion, to provide a good service.
Yeah.
And having to do tons of paperwork, which appears to be the priority now, other than helping patients feel better.
Yeah, I think it certainly comes down to time and how that best serves the individual, let's say, patient. I think you said you had like 16 people a day kind of crammed into probably like a 8-hour window where you've got paperwork to do. You've got to obviously have like your own breaks and all this other admin and things like that. And I wonder, like, I understand the idea, like you want to see the system wants to see as many people being served as possible. But even if you were to like cut that number from 16 people to 8 people and then double the time you're with those individuals, do you think that would have been like a way to actually serve those people better, and you'd actually end up in the long term seeing them less because you're able to work with them more?
I think that is definitely a possibility because you're able to address more things at one time. You're able to do more of a thorough investigation, and that will provide a better outcome. Yeah, no questions about that.
Yeah, the time people actually have with a doctor, it can be like quite time restricting, and you might not even be able to get to all of the, let's say, symptoms that people are having and dive into them a little bit deeper. I remember when I finished practicing, I studied holistic nutrition for 4 years. That's actually what brought me to Canada. When I started working with individuals, they're primarily men in their mid to late 30s who weren't getting away with their dietary choices anymore. They were putting on weight, they were getting slower, they were having poor sleep, issues in the bedroom, like all these things were like coming up for them out of the blue. And they've been to their doctor about these things, but when they had their initial consult with me, it was like, my initial consult was 2 hours. We'd have this very long open conversation, and by the end of it, like, we have created this alliance where there was a lot of trust there. These people were able to actually like sit in silence while they actually thought about their answers rather than kind of being rushed to get everything out. And I just found that to be a really therapeutic thing for not just myself as just like a practitioner and learning more intimate details about my clients, but it's very rare that people are in an experience where they're being listened to with quality for 2 hours. Like people don't necessarily even have that in their personal lives because everyone's busy. I think a lot of people are just kind of like waiting for their turn to speak next rather than like really like holding space for people. And yeah, that time that you have to be quality time, it's very, very challenging. I suspect, I've not worked as a doctor in a conventional model, so I don't know, but I can imagine like those time restraints really dictate the potential quality relationship you're going to have with a patient or a client.
100%. I mean, because not only are you kind of strapped for time and not able to, sometimes you have to kind of cut people off just to kind of get through everything you need to get through in this short amount of time. But also as providers, you are totally drained and depleted from working at that pace for so long. So it's not really doing anybody favors.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you're obviously in a healthcare setting, and it ends up being like this stressful state that everyone's kind of in. Like everyone from the people behind the admin desk to practitioners to people in the waiting room, etc. It's more of a stressful environment rather than like this healing recovery setting. So you specialize in helping ambitious women who are silently carrying so much. And I'd love to know what are some of the like more common emotional or psychological tales that indicate someone is actually stuck in this survival mode, even though from the outside they look fine, they're high functioning individuals, but inside they're carrying a lot.
Yeah. So typically, like the picture that this brings to my mind is, well, burnout and someone literally who looks like they've lost their spark. So people are kind of feeling more, well, burnout is really a sense of emotional and physical exhaustion. And so people are looking fatigued. They might not be interacting as much as they used to, kind of withdrawing. They will feel like very wired, but also tired, having cognitive issues. So maybe they're not completing tasks and doing the things that they used to do at the level that they had before. They might be kind of dropping the ball, so to speak, more than they had in the past. Some cynicism or feeling disconnected, mood shifts. Someone who typically used to be maybe upbeat or bubbly now can appear more apathetic or somewhat depressed or anxious. Even like physical symptoms can manifest from it as well, like headaches or aches or pains, or getting like sickness more than usual. People can even use substances to try to cope, which could be, abnormal for that person. So there can be a lot of different signs kind of depending, but I think the overarching theme would be someone who really looks like kind of that their candle has been blown out and they're just not really, their personality is different than it had used to be. They just really feel depleted, and that is showing through in their interactions with others and kind of the way that they're functioning in their daily life.
And do you think you could maybe explain to us a little bit about like what's going on like biochemically with people when they're experiencing that? Because obviously people who are in that survival high stress mode and then that burnout happens and it's kind of like a quick crash down, and then we're talking about like those personality changes and those changes in physical appearance that may happen with that. Can you maybe explain a little bit what's happening from that high functioning survival state and then the drop off?
Yeah, sure. So because these ambitious women are accustomed to kind of going full throttle for everything that they do for so long, they're in that chronic kind of fight or flight mode. So they've got the cortisol kind of chronically pumping through their body, and the nervous system gets out of balance, and eventually things must come crashing down. And so physiologically, that's what you're seeing is this kind of chronic stress response. And then all of a sudden it just kind of gives out.
Hmm. Yeah, I think most people have probably got an example of somebody in their lives who have experienced that, even maybe themselves, because we do live in this culture, this society where it is kind of like go, go, go. Being stressed and super busy is like some sort of model of success, which
Hmm.
I don't think so, but that's kind of like where we're at. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. And are there any, apart from maybe coming to see somebody like you, what's the common pathway for someone who does experience this burnout, this big drop off, and they start experiencing probably psychological and physical symptoms? What's the usual typical pathway that someone might take, especially these ambitious women that you're working with, that they would usually take, like when they were going to go and see their doctor or practitioner? What's the usual route?
Yeah, so I think women like this tend to try a lot of different things. For one, they might go to their primary care doctor, if especially if they're having some kind of like physical symptoms, to just make sure that there's nothing going on kind of from a medical standpoint. And then doing kind of all those stereotypical self-care things, like maybe going and getting like massages or spas, or trying to exercise, or going on retreats are really common. But burnout isn't a quick fix like that. It's
Mm.
really a lifestyle change. And so trying lots of different kind of self-care relaxation tactics, but not really making any progress, or maybe feeling a little bit better in the short term, but
Yeah.
they're kind of going back to square one.
So people typically go for kind of like more of a escapism type of therapy, whether that's for an hour at a massage or a couple of days at a retreat, but then jumping straight into the routine that's kind of got them into the place where they've felt like they've needed that. But that's not quite getting to maybe the root cause of how people are getting there.
Yeah, correct. And I think that women like this, their mindset is like, oh, I just kind of got to suck it up. I can get through this,
Yeah.
take a little break, and I'll get back on track, and I've got this. But when you've been going, like I said, full throttle for so long, at some point in time, something's got to give.
What are some of the more like really, let's say, dangerous symptoms or disorders that can come from, let's say, fluctuating from that state of like, high functioning burnout crash, and then maybe like resting, relaxing for a bit, and then going through it all again? Like, people do this for decades, right? So are there any like typical disorders that may come from that, especially hormonal, I guess, would be an area?
Yeah, well, your hormones do get out of whack from this chronic stress response. It's depleting resources from making stress hormones into like pumping out cortisol. So that can be something that um, could be determined with more of a medical workup. But from a mental or psychological standpoint, I mean, it can go a variety of ways. People can go from the sense of kind of emotional exhaustion or not caring, apathetic state, to getting depressed,
Yeah.
because they don't see anything getting better. Obviously, anxiety can be a big picture because they're really struggling to hold everything together, and it's getting to be like too big to manage. People can even feel suicidal
Yeah.
because they don't see a way out, or they've been feeling this way for so long. And sometimes people don't want to reach out because they feel like they should be able to manage this, and they don't think their problems are big enough to complain. And so it can transpire in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and especially when somebody is going through those like very harsh like fluctuations,
Mhm.
and yeah, women have this, I don't know, high expectation within our society to just like go, go, go and do everything at 100 miles an hour, take care of the house, take care of the kids, take care of their career. Like it must be so unbelievably exhausting. And you obviously work with these highly ambitious women, and to try and help them kind of like, I don't know, not like get back on track, but I'd love to dive a little bit more into your own specific practice and your approach. So it sounds like your approach moves beyond just traditional symptom control. So maybe you could walk us through what root cause focused care actually looks like in your practice?
Sure. So, as as a prior assistant professor, I truly believe, and this is what I would teach my students, is that a thorough assessment, I mean, that is where you need to focus. And because if you're missing the correct diagnosis, your treatment plan might not work, right? So it starts with really figuring out, where did these symptoms begin? So traditional psychiatric evaluation would be, having a conversation with the client about their upbringing, childhood experiences, any type of trauma that may have occurred, even little things. We call them big T's and little T's, big traumas and little traumas. Little T's can add up. We look at genetic predispositions. Is there a family history of any type of mental health disorder? Looking at a timeline. When did these symptoms begin? And what else was going on in your life at that time that may have been contributing to that? So the conversational piece is huge. And then once we have that information, kind of moving more into a medical lens, and ruling out any type of medical condition that could be contributing to their symptoms. So I have kind of like a standard protocol that I follow when I'm working with a patient, and it could vary a little bit depending on their individual circumstances and age and all different types of things. But generally, it includes checking like their a CBC, or checking their blood cells to make sure they don't have an anemia or an infection or something like that. Their kidney, their liver, their electrolytes. Checking their thyroid. That's a big one. I can't even tell you how many times I have uncovered a thyroid disorder. Checking their vitamin levels, vitamin D. Like, I think 95% of people that I see have vitamin D deficiency, B12 and folate, and the list goes on. Just to be very thorough and make sure that we've kind of covered all our bases, gathered all the information that we need to really make sure that we're making the correct diagnosis, or at least have a good idea of what it could be, and our differentials, and then developing that individualized treatment plan based on that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And just you were saying at the beginning there in regards to, it's obviously so important to get that initial assessment and to do the best to get the right diagnosis. Are there cases where, and you said trying to get the right diagnosis for the right treatment, are there cases where you could get the wrong diagnosis, go down the wrong treatment plan, and that could actually be like exacerbate problems?
Yeah, 100% that could happen. In fact, I worked with a woman just recently that exact thing happened to, where she had been, I'm going to change the story a little bit to protect the patient's identity, but she had been having some medical problems and was put on a medication to kind of treat what she was going through. Then she was having side effects from that medicine, and she was telling her team repeatedly, I don't do well on this type of medicine. I took it in the past. I had this same experience, and I'm having it now. And she felt like it was kind of falling on deaf ears, and that she needed to take this to kind of recover from this medical issue that she was experiencing. And she was having significant psychological symptoms from this. And it got so bad that she ended up needing somewhat of a higher level of psychiatric care.
Wow.
To manage that. And it's because people weren't listening. They weren't paying attention, listening to the patient, and she was kind of getting a lot of other things thrown at her to try to treat it. Really, what needed to be done was that one medication removed.
Taking a step back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And yeah, on that topic, I was going to ask you, like, I'm sure you have experienced so many people, so many women that come to your practice who have been on loads of different medications, but I wanted to get your opinion on how do you think that doctors are way too quick to jump to like a psychotropic medication when they have somebody who comes in who's experiencing these changes in their psychological and physiological life because they're experiencing burnout because they've just been going way too hard and they've got this crash and they're going to see their doctor and they're expressing anxieties or suicidal tendencies or depressions, and then they get thrown onto in some cases like an SSRI, which is it's a serious medication. Do you think that people are getting put on those a bit too easy?
I think that can happen for sure. I think that there's good intention behind it, but I feel like that maybe could be because we're not able to spend the amount of time that's really required to really understand the full picture, that could be premature in some cases and could cause more harm than good for some people. Like I said, probably really good intentions, but maybe not necessary for some people. Definitely, burnout isn't really treated with antidepressants. That's a whole different type of treatment. So if we've put somebody on a medication for the wrong condition, we're not really doing them any favors.
No, I can just imagine like somebody going to a doctor's office and explaining that they're feeling tired, they're fatigued, they're run down, they're feeling like they've got sad thoughts all the time, they're depressed and they're anxious. I can just imagine that they would get put onto something very, 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 very quickly because I can't imagine like what other options really like an allopathic doctor would have at their disposal in like an 8-minute consultation to give somebody to take away with them, because they obviously want to provide them with something to improve their circumstances as quickly as they possibly can. And in 8 minutes, it can be a bit of a struggle to, really dive deep into, this assessment that we're talking about.
I don't know how you could get anything done in 8 minutes, honestly. Yeah, for sure. And it can look like depression and anxiety, and people want to help. And that is a tool that they're like, oh, these are the symptoms of depression and anxiety. This can help you out. Not always the case.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about like micronutrients and supplementation when it comes to like mental health, because I think there's a growing conversation about the vital role that they play, especially when we're learning how depleted our soil is. Therefore, our food is unbelievably nutrient poor, and we've got the most abundant amount of toxins we're being exposed to on a daily basis, like never before in human history. People are just being bombarded. So our liver, for example, is having to work like overload into dealing with these. And if we're undernutrited as well, like people are always just going to kind of be in this state of deficiency, this state of lack. So from your perspective, why are like what do you think micronutrients' role is when it comes to brain function, emotional regulation within the scope of the people that you're working with?
I think it is of the utmost importance to make sure that we're looking at nutrition and that the patient is optimized from a nutritional standpoint, because nutrition literally is the building blocks of us. Like our DNA is made out of it, our cells, our mitochondria, our neurotransmitters, our muscles, our bones, our brains, everything is made out of food, essentially. So if I feel like it's kind of like the foundation of a home, if that is not sound, there's going to be issues down the road, right? Nutrition affects the way that our cells communicate with each other. I mean, it's just so important, and it can be such low-hanging fruit to address.
Yeah.
And even the most, like you said, the most like well-intentioned people, they could be doing their best to eat like a really balanced diet and focus on fruits and vegetables and whatnot. And the food, the quality of the food is not always there.
For sure. Yeah. I think more and more people are beginning to understand the what the body is going through when it's in this like high functioning, high stress state, and how that's very different to like when you're like on vacation in Hawaii at the Four Seasons. Your body is biochemically like doing different things. It's being able to produce chemicals at different rates. But when you're in this stress state, your body's always kind of on the high alert. It's not putting rest and repair as a priority when it comes to like, down to the genetic level, down to your cellular level, to your organs, etc., into these systems. So there's going to be at some point, as we said before, like when you hit this like burnout, your body's unable to deal with what you are, expecting it to deal with. especially with the lack of nutrients it's getting to be able to build the building blocks, to build the cofactors, to build the neurotransmitters, all of these things that your body needs, that something kind of has to give. And whether you want to call burnout and fatigue and depression, anxiety, whether you want to call these messages from the body that are just saying to somebody, listen, like, everything's not doing very well here. I need some support. I need something different. We need to get this figured out, because the body cannot keep up with the expectation here. Yeah, I feel like more people maybe are recognizing a little bit more about like how putting yourself in like a rest and digest in a parasympathetic state, be that through, I don't know, being in nature or being within community or working out, whatever that might be, meditation, yoga, whatever, how valuable that type of thing is. And I think because it's like cheap, easy, and free to do those things, maybe not so much value is put on it. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that, I agree. I feel like people know that they should do those things, but they don't. But if they were to practice them, they would realize the benefits that they provide. And it's something you can do in your own home on your own time and is incredibly valuable. Like, our nervous systems are dysregulated from this go, go, go mentality that, we're struggling with on a day-to-day basis. And taking time for yourself to reset that nervous system and put yourself in like the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest, that chill out mode, can help decrease cortisol and stress, and goes a long way for improving your mental health and your physical health as well.
Yeah. And I think when you're able to have like these longer form assessments that you're talking about, I'm sure you've got like a very specific intake form where you're kind of like going through, ticking all the boxes in regards to having conversations about the holistic side of the different aspects of somebody's life. And many people don't realize that nutrient imbalances, nutrient deficiencies can mimic or exacerbate this psychological disorder. So I wonder if you've got any examples or stories of people who have been really supported just through nutritional interventions.
Yes, I have a lot of those. I would have to say, like, especially for older adults, like, it's really common knowledge that if they're experiencing symptoms of like depression, anxiety, cognitive changes, even up to psychosis, like, it's standard to check things like vitamin D and vitamin B12, thiamine, folate, because these are reversible causes. And obviously in older adults, there's more risk factors for that, but the same exists for younger people too. And so I think it's absolutely so common to come across this. And I've seen so many patients, like most recently I was working with like a 30-ish-year-old female with depression and anxiety, that she'd been on a couple of SSRIs, had maybe a little bit of a response, but not near to where she was feeling well. Came in, we ran through like those standard labs that I spoke about earlier, and uncovered a vitamin D deficiency and B12 deficiency. She was also a vegetarian, which can be a big clue to really check out a person's nutritional status, which unfortunately had been missed. And so we replenished these vitamins, and within a couple of months, she was feeling so much better. Her brain fog had cleared. She had her energy back. Her mood had lifted, anxiety way down. And so now what we're focusing on is kind of trimming away at the antidepressant medication that she had been on. And I mean, people that feel like they will never get better can get so much better with something as simple as like vitamin D. I mean, it's amazing. And again, like kind of back to what you were saying about like the mindfulness practices, people think, oh, vitamin D, not like a big deal, but it is. It can be life-changing, and I've seen it many times.
Amazing. Thanks for that. That's really amazing to hear. And I'm here at True Hope Canada. I'm kind of in charge of all of our marketing, and I see all the emails and messages on the website, social media messages of people who have used our product and have had significant success in kind of like lifting that veil of depression or anxiety that's stopping them from like doing all the other things that they know are going to benefit them and the things that provide them happiness, whether that's exercise or going out for dinner with a friend or cooking a good meal rather than getting takeout. And at the end of the day, like, it's just good quality nutrition, being able to like fulfill the requirements needed. And what's quite special about Empower Plus, which is our flagship product here at True Hope Canada, we put our ingredients, especially our vitamins and minerals, in bioavailable forms, and we chelate our minerals for 4 days. The industry standard is 4 hours, and that's all through a patented process here at True Hope. So our minerals are able to actually get through the blood-brain barrier and actually nutrate cells within the brain, and that's why we see so much kind of, I don't want to say quick recovery, but like fast impact. People like in days can start to feel their brain kind of like firing again, and therefore they're able to, like, as I say, lift this veil and be able to do all these other things, because it's not like this one supplement or this one nutrition, this one vitamin or mineral is going to like cure people, but it's this building block that can give people like a little bit of a motivation to reduce a symptom, to help them kind of really get to the root cause and begin creating kind of like new habits around their health and wellness. And it's just so it's almost like magical to see, like something that's like so cheap and so easy to be able to start providing the body. And at the end of the day, we're just giving the body these necessary vital nutrients in good quality forms, and then the body kind of like just takes care of the rest. So we're not really doing too much. We're just supplementing and providing the body what it needs.
Right. And it's an amazing product. I know that it has been thoroughly researched in multiple countries and has incredible results. And it's actually the broad spectrum micronutrient therapy that was recommended in the integrative psychiatry training that I attended. So I know that it is a very powerful, vitamin that, when we're looking at a person, like, nobody is suffering from Zoloft deficiency, right?
No, they're not.
No. So, I mean, yes, these small but mighty, big impact, and that's where it's at, going back to nature.
And you can almost guarantee that most people are nutrient deficient in one or the other, and you can usually guess probably what that's going to be just through some simple questions and testing. But at the end of the day, like, our food is not what it used to be. We are stressed out more than ever. We are taking in these toxins more than ever. So supplementing with good quality products, and that's really important, because there are, in Canada anyway, most products on the shelves are not great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very small percentage which are really, really good, which is great, because you don't have to go there and pick from 1,000 different bottles if you know which companies are doing a good job and they've got the research to back it. Mm-hmm. But taking good quality supplementation is absolutely vital. So we do our best to work with psychiatrists and retail stores around Canada to get their staff educated on the fact that this product and micronutrients in general can work so well for people. But obviously it's starting at that diagnosis stage, that investigatory stage, where people can actually have conversations with qualified health practitioners to find out what they might be lacking, and begin by supplementing that, because there's no credible source from Health Canada anyway that would point to a natural health product causing a death. So why not go for it first,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a low risk, high potential return on investment product that, everybody should be taking something like this.
I want to talk a little bit more about your work, especially around perfectionism and imposter syndrome and burnout. And these are obviously so common in women that you see. Why do you think these patterns are so persistent, and how do you help clients begin to kind of unwind them? What are those initial conversations like?
Yeah. So, typically perfectionism develops early on. That's something that usually begins in adolescence, for a variety of reasons, different contributors to that. But it becomes very ingrained because it gets reinforced. Oh, if I do really well on this test, my parents give me attention, or, I have a lot of friends because I am, the best player on the volleyball team, or whatever. And And so because of that positive feedback, these behaviors persist. It's really a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
Um, and women then will tend to be at the top of their class or get positions at work and that are more prestigious, and they just continue to feel this desire to achieve and work at the highest level that they're able to. And because kind of the underbelly of it is a sense of not being good enough and not feeling like you deserve it and feeling like you worked so hard that it probably, like, somebody else should be in this position. It shouldn't really be you. Like, that contributes to the imposter syndrome, and it kind of just snowballs and entangles with anxiety and then burnout. And so unwinding it goes back to that history taking and that timeline, like figuring out, when did these symptoms begin, what are some events that could be contributing or making symptoms worse, and trying to figure out, like I said, the root cause, and then addressing it from there on out. And fortunately, most of these conditions that I treat, they have similar treatment plan in the therapy realm. So
Hmm.
you can address these things at the same time.
And I guess when you're having these like initial conversations with people and you kind of like helping them backtrack to where they're at and what might be like primary contributors, I feel like that's most likely for the patient, for the person you're speaking with, a really helpful, enlightening process, because they're able to actually like take a few steps back and realize when and where they slip into those types of patterns.
Absolutely. And I mean, all of this can be on a spectrum. And some people have very, very overt perfectionistic tendencies, and they are very aware of it. And some people really aren't
Mm.
aware. So, really exploring that with people can provide insight, and just knowing, like having an understanding of maybe why I am behaving the way that I am and the thoughts and the beliefs that I have, can already help with treatment and moving forward, and um, beginning to live life in a way where we're not so caught up in how well we're doing and achieving, but able to enjoy the things that are really important to us.
Yeah. And I know in your content and your site, you talk about helping clients shift from performing confidence to actually feeling confident. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and like, what shifts make that possible for someone?
hmm So, yeah, 100%. It's so important to have this persona or this mask of confidence. And oftentimes people just feel very, very weak underneath that tough exterior. And so the work really is done in therapy, and it's learning how to raise your self-esteem by doing things that are not achieving, and exposing yourself to experiences where you are getting this positive feedback from being authentic, and just really working on doing a lot of inner work in that realm to put less emphasis on being successful and achieving goals and being perfect, and getting that same type of reward from other
Mhm.
things. And it's not a fast process. It takes time for sure, but that's how it's done.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. And I just want to finish up with maybe providing people with some ideas and solutions in which they can take into their lives, into their days right now. But what does mental health reimagined like mean to you? And what's one um, mindset shift you kind of love every listener to take away from like this conversation today?
Yeah, so I think mental health reimagined is really just kind of throwing this boxed model of care out the window, because in my opinion, it's just not working for a lot of people. And so taking a much different approach to treatment than what are your symptoms? Okay, let's start this medicine. Now you're going to go over here and you're going to get this therapy. And it's very piecemealed together. And people have in their mind like, oh, talk therapy, oh, antidepressant, that's not going to work for me. And it doesn't work for a lot of people. So coming up with a new, fresh approach to mental health care, which is truly holistic, which is a service that I provide, to work on kind of fulfilling all these areas of a person's life, not just addressing their low mood and their fatigue, but their social relationships, their physical fitness, expanding upon this kind of basic model that I think most people associate with psychiatric services today. And as far as like what I would like people to take away is that there are other options out there than this kind of traditional stereotypical model of care to help you through your tough times. And it's not there's no shame in seeking this help. There's a lot of different treatment options and people that care, and you're not in this alone.
Beautiful. And I've just got one more question for you that's just kind of popped into my head here. For those people who are working with working with their primary care practitioners, what are there any maybe like red flags that they could look out for to maybe understand that maybe this isn't the right person for me to be working with, and maybe they should be looking for somebody more like you?
I think probably the biggest flag that could be raised would be something that you spoke to earlier, which is not feeling like you're being listened to. Just not having the time devoted to you and the listening ear, because that really limits what can be done to help you achieve your goals and get you feeling better. And so I think there's one takeaway, that would be it.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. I think that's some really great advice that people can jump into right now. So maybe you can just let us know where people can connect with you and can learn more about your work.
Sure. So, my practice is called Mind Alchemy Mental Health, and it's at mindalchemymentalhealth.com is my website. You can also find me on social media. I have Instagram page. It's the same, Mind Alchemy Mental Health, YouTube. I'm out there, and I would love it if you have questions to reach out to me. My email's on my website. I would love to hear from you and help you in any way that I can.
Amazing. Well, I'll make sure that all those links are available for people, so they're just a click away from learning more about you and even connecting. So that's awesome, Britt. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. I loved being here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And you'd never know, everybody listening and watching, that this was Britt's first ever podcast episode, but she's absolutely wonderful. I hope to get her back on the show soon. And without question, you need to be on more and more podcasts, spreading your knowledge and your inspiration and your motivation. So please continue to do that and have more of these conversations, because we need them.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that is it for this episode of True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. Again, you can check out the show notes for links to connect with Britt and find out more about her work. But yeah, that is it for this week. We will see you soon.